Hi everyone, Lisa from Budget Makes. Today I thought I'd do a little video on explaining my creative process of how I go about building my costumes and props. I see it quite frequently on different forums about how to get started, especially from the new cosplayers who've never cosplayed before and they want to start making their own costumes. It can be really overwhelming of, oh my god, where do I even start? So hopefully this will help a little bit. If you do like the video, please let me know. Don't forget to like and leave me a comment, and I'll drop some links into the description too. So the first thing that you need to do is research. I cannot emphasize this enough, but research. Research, research. It seems really obvious, but it's absolutely fundamental in understanding construction, details, fabric choices, and generally getting your head around the whole thing. I start by looking at reference images. If the game or the movie or whatever it is that you're doing hasn't come out yet, then Google that shit. You will still find quite a lot of stuff. HD trailers are often really useful for this reason, because if you don't have a DVD that you can screen cap off, or the art books haven't been released or something like that, then at least you've got something. Literally anything that gives you a full and detailed view. I especially love art books because they have quite a lot of information in them. You have like the whole concept of how they came to the original final design, and you've often got information about the premise behind the character's design. So art books, so pretty. And I have like a bunch behind me. I like collecting them because they're pretty art, but yeah, they're really good. Things like this are really helpful because they'll have images in there. What I like to do is I will save all my images into a folder on my computer. I have different files set up specifically for the different characters that I'm doing, and then I just dump everything in there. I'll even look at pictures of like the figures because they're often, while not necessarily 100% screen accurate, they are still really helpful. Especially because you can get back views of them, because back views are really hard to find a lot of time, especially in things like trailers and so forth. So get as much as you possibly can. Doesn't matter if you go overboard, because you can always delete stuff that you end up being irrelevant, but it will save you a lot of time. I often print out my reference pictures when I'm actually working so that I have something to work off instead of having to flick back to my computer or anything like that, but whatever's easier. If a character is from a historical period, I'll also look into period costumes, fabrics and materials that would have been used, information about the character and the period itself that could be useful. This was really helpful when I was doing Connor and Sharpshooter. It meant that things like even Sharpshooter's rifle is accurate. So here's a Kentucky rifle. It's what was specifically used at that time, rather than just getting a musket, because a musket and a Kentucky rifle are quite different. The leggings on Connor are specific for his tribe, so I actually did research on the Native Americans that he was from so that I could make sure that they were accurate, as well as accurate to the character from the reference, and it also helped me in construction, so that was really helpful. And the other thing that I'll also do is I'll research construction itself. What techniques lend themselves to my skills and my abilities, as well as my finances, because let's face it, we're not necessarily rolling in money. If you have like shit tons of money and you can do whatever, then go for it. But I have to budget. Unfortunately, I don't have a deep well of money. So I have to fit something that fits my finances. I look at what is the most appropriate method for the costume or prop. And this also helps me determine the material that I'll end up making it out of. So for example, when I did our Skylanders costumes, I looked at a variety of different ways that people had made like mascot style costumes. For myself, I ended up going with foam, so that obviously picked the material and the way that I constructed it. Don't be afraid to look at how other people have built something, and don't feel limited because you've never done something before. Pretty much like every single one of my costumes is a completely new way of constructing that I've never done before. So don't feel intimidated. Just do a shit ton of research. Don't forget too that you can look at things that aren't necessarily the same character, but the construction method is really similar. So for example, if you're building armor, go and have a look at all the different armor. So look at a Cyberman, look at Iron Man, look at Skyrim, I don't know, whatever. Look at everything that's possible, because it'll still give you the fundamental basic ideas of how to construct things differently. Once you have in your head how you're going to do it, then everything else will start to fall into place. The next thing that I do is I sketch things out. It doesn't have to be super neat. I'm a very visual person. That's how my brain works. So for me to understand how pieces fit together, I have to sketch it out. And this will usually just be in a sketchbook. My poor sketchbook was in my car and my car flooded, and now it's all moldy, so I'm really sorry. But this is some examples. Like, they don't have to be perfect sketches, but I basically draw out and I label. So annotations are really helpful for understanding what it is that you're drawing, the materials that you might use, how things are gonna. So you're gonna use Velcro, you're gonna use clips. Is there strapping in there? Is it leather? Whatever. Those types of things are really handy. At this stage, it doesn't need to be anything fancy, just rough sketches. Sometimes the costumes or the props of whatever character you're doing aren't really that practical in real life, like especially like game physics. Game physics are ridiculous. They don't work, so we do end up having to modify things to make it work in real life. So this is a really good stage for me to help figure out how it is that I'm going to piece it together. How is it actually going to operate? Do I have to put hidden attachment pieces, points in there or anything like that? I still want to go for accuracy because that's who I am. I really like accuracy, but there sometimes has to be a bit of compromise. I'll usually add notes, as I said, to my drawing so I can make sense of them later, because sometimes I'm like, what? This is another example. This is like on a scrap piece of paper. This is when I was designing my Destiny armor. So I was looking at different styles of armor, and basically because of boobs, that sort of changes how I have to construct things. So sketches are really helpful, and they, as I said, they don't have to be perfect sketches. So the next step is patterning. I hate patterning. I loathe patterning. It's the most time-consuming part for me, but it's also really, really, really important. So it is really worth investing in the time and doing it properly. So my skills are pretty limited when it comes to creating patterns from scratch. I am getting better, and I'm learning as I go. So where I can, I try and make my life easier. I look at existing patterns. It's a lot easier to modify an existing pattern than it is to make one from scratch. So for example, this is the pattern, and in there is my modified pattern. So you can see it's just made with baking paper. Baking paper is really amazing. You can just get the cheap stuff. Or you can use like butcher paper that you just get from like the craft art store. It's cheap as. And scrap fabric. Calico is really good. I got like a massive bolt of white twill for like $10, like a huge bolt. And I didn't need that much of it. So that gets used for drafting out my patterns, because I like to test fit things because I'm not very good at patterning. So that way I can modify anything as needed. If it's not an option to modify a pattern, then get out your butcher paper and start drafting. Start making mock-ups. If you've got a dress form or a duct tape dummy, that's a really big boon, because you can start draping things on top of that, pinning it and drawing directly on that. So I actually started when I did the Captain America stealth suit that I still have to finish. Oops. I did not have a pattern for that. I scratch patterned that. Oh God, that was horrific because everything was measured perfectly. And I'll drop an image here so you can see what it looks like. But that was basically drafted straight onto the mannequin. If you're doing like an armor pattern, sometimes craft foam is really helpful for that. Craft foam is pretty cheap. Depending on what I'm working on, I'll often create digital templates. So if I'm making a lot of my props, I'll actually template that myself. And I have a chute that I've already done, which you can see here. So follow that, and that will show you how I actually go about vectoring my templates. So for example, when I made this was done digitally first, and then I could sculpt and make sure that my sculpt fit to the digital pattern. It means that I can scale things really easily. Materials can be really expensive, and there's nothing worse than working an entire day on something only to realize that it's not the right shape, size, fit, whatever. So as much as I hate this step, I hate redoing things more. So that is the end of the first part. Stay tuned for part 2, and I will go into the next detail of how to actually construct and finish your pieces. But hopefully this will give you a little bit of a start on how to actually go about building your costumes or your props, or both. As I said, feel free to leave me any comments. If you have any questions, drop them. I'll drop the links below, so follow those links for some other tutorials and reference places that you can have a look of how other people go about building stuff. Thank you for watching. Bye!